Viper is actually someone we've seen in a Marvel movie before, just not an MCU movie. Viper appeared in the Wolverine movie released in 2013. If you don't remember it, I don't blame you. It's the one in Japan, if that jogs your memory. Viper also has gone by another alias, Madame Hydra. Madame Hydra is the name of a character in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 4 in a hyper-realistic simulation called The Framework, where Hydra is the dominating power. It's quite a long story, that whole Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. thing, so if you want to hear how that came to be, just go watch the show. But now that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is largely non-canon, you could argue that Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, first seen in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier and then in Black Widow, has also gone as the Madame Hydra alias. That being said, I'm not going to put Viper on the MCU edition list, since it's a little too big of a stretch to go from Viper to Madame Hydra to Valentina Allegra de Fontaine. I hope I'm saying that right. But yeah, since it's too much of a stretch, I'm just not going to put it on the list. What baffles me about Viper in this game, though, is that despite all this Hydra talk, the Hydra and S.H.I.E.L.D. ability are absent from her list of abilities. I had just assumed she had it, so she was ranked a bit higher. As soon as I found out she didn't have Hydra and S.H.I.E.L.D. as abilities, I bumped her down by a ton, because you would assume that she would have to have it, you know? Her three abilities otherwise are Grapple, Toxic Immunity, and of course Agility. So I've mentioned Moon Boy a few times so far in this series, and this will likely be the last time. When I talked about Moon Boy, I was careful to not mention his partner in crime, who is also a much more interesting character out of the two. That guy, it's not a guy actually, if you can't tell, it's a devil dinosaur. He's the subject of this segment, if you can't tell by the, what's being presented in front of you. This is probably the most unique character in the entire game, primarily because it's a dinosaur, The LEGO Jurassic World game released merely 6 months before LEGO Avengers, so they most likely just reused assets from that game, reskinning the playable T-Rex in that game to a devil dinosaur. Ability-wise, no character would be this high up on the list, but I made an exception for Devil Dinosaur because, he's a dinosaur in a Marvel game. His three abilities are Cracked Wall, Regenerative Health, and Immunity to Fire, Gas, and Toxins. Yeah, I'll admit it, his abilities kind of suck, with 2 of them being passive, but he's a dinosaur, okay? He's not a half-baked dinosaur like Reptile, but he's a big, unapologetic dinosaur, a devil dinosaur. You guys understand. Songbird is a member of the Thunderbolts, which is also the DLC pack she comes from. The Thunderbolts is a team of super criminals turned good, maybe, led by Baron Zemo himself. Speaking of him, I came across the information in my research that Citizen V is just the alias of Zemo. So that's why I found him as underwhelming, I guess. Anyway, for a team of reformed supervillains, I find it weird to see Songbird here. Not that I know anything about her, it's just that Songbird does not look like the bad guy type. Okay, looking through the wiki. Looks like she was first called Screaming Mimi, which, okay, yeah, I could see how she could be seen as a villain. She probably gave herself a new name for the Thunderbolts. In this game, she has her uses, but is nothing to write home about. Her first ability is glass, since her vocals are what gives her powers. So, yeah, she can break glass with it. She can also fly, with the most fascinating form of flight in this game, in my opinion. She has these magic transparent wings that she has to fly around with. Her last ability is Force Field, again, with the same magic transparent material she has for her wings. Alright, a few segments ago, there was a character that appeared in a Fox movie, Viper, and now we have another. What's the big idea? Well, notice the original in parentheses after Human Torch. This is Jim Hammond, not Johnny Storm. They actually made quite a big deal about the differentiation in the game, especially in the quest he gave at S.H.I.E.L.D. base.
But you probably know me as the Human Torch, as in the original, not... never mind.
Now, it's funny that they make a joke about him not being the Human Torch we're used to seeing, but it's still a major kick to the balls nonetheless. Like, I know there are a ton of Marvel characters missing from the roster. I mean, it wouldn't make sense for X-Men and Fantastic Four characters to be in a game centered around the MCU, but after the Lego Marvel game from 2014, that was basically a Marvel fan's wet dream. The drastic cut of characters for this game is disappointing. And don't get me started on Lego Marvel Superheroes 2. They could have brought back the X-Men and Fantastic Four characters, and then they opted not to. Anyway, all in all, this character is just a reminder of the game's lackluster roster when it's compared to the Lego Marvel game that came before it. This Human Torch has 3 abilities, and all are expected. Firstly, he has flight, and gets coated in flames when he flies, which is a Human Torch staple. Also, he has a laser and is immune to fire, naturally. By the way, the Human Torch's red suit did make an appearance for a moment in the first Captain America movie at the Expo. That little cameo is probably a big reason why we see this guy in the game, along with the jab at my heartstrings. And just like that, we have a core member of the Avengers being presented right here. Well, this is the one variant that's not in the base game, but rather a DLC pack. This time it's the Masters of Evil DLC, and this Thor, specified as the classic variant, is one of 2 boss fights in that level. Thor has 3 abilities in this game, and there are 3 Thors in the game, so it's perfect to cover 1 ability per Thor segment. The first one I'll cover is the easy one. Thor can fly in the movies, and he has flight in this game. Bada bing, bada boom. There's my obligation for this segment come and gone. The reason why I placed this classic Thor as the least of the 3 Thors is simply because I don't like a fresh-shaven Thor. It's wrong. Well, okay, I take it back. The classic Thor is fine fresh-shaven, but this isn't that Thor. I'm talking about the campy metal helmet, tighty whities, overcompensating cape, the whole shebang. A manly beard would throw things off. The classic Thor in this game is just a weird amalgamation of the MCU Thor and the wacky comics version from the 60s. The classic Thor in this game lacks the helmet, which is a huge missed opportunity, and he actually keeps the same hairstyle. And then everything else seems to be adapted from the 60s outfit. It's just weird. And not the good weird like Double Dinosaur. This is the variant of Thor that corresponds to the first Avengers movie. Typically, the variant of an Avenger, with no parentheses by their name to distinguish which variant it is the first Avengers film variant. Also tends to never be the best variant of a certain Avenger. That's just the way the cookie crumbles, I guess. The next ability that all 3 Thors possess is Cracked Wall. However, Thor's Cracked Wall ability is special. Most characters that have Cracked Wall must be in direct contact to do it. So that means the Cracked Wall must be on the ground or, right on a wall at the bottom of the wall. However, mostly in story levels, there are Cracked Walls that are elevated and can't be reached by most characters with the Cracked Wall ability. Thor is specially made for this scenario, in which he can throw his trusty hammer to bust the wall down. In that case, Thor's Cracked Wall ability is a bit of a refined version when compared to most characters with the same Cracked Wall ability. I said the standard variant is almost always the first Avengers film variant, and the Age of Ultron variant is denoted with the A:\AOU in parentheses. What's interesting is that the Avengers variants are directly taken from the sets that they were released with their respective movies. That being said, some of the Avengers look drastically different between the first and second movie variants. Thor isn't much affected by this situation, but I mean, the 2 main Hulks in this game are 2 entirely different shades of green. But I mean, we'll get to that when we do. Anyway, the last ability all Thors possess is his god's sake. Thor is the god of thunder, so of course he has the electricity ability. Throughout the game, there are many electricity generators, and characters like Thor can charge them up. A lot of characters with electricity can just charge them up immediately, but unfortunately, there's another step for Thor. Thor has to charge up by holding down the button, and then when he's charged, electricity surges around him, and then he can fill up the generator. Beta Ray Bill was one of the first characters I became aware of as a kid. That made me realize that, damn, Marvel can be weird sometimes, especially in the Thor department. Now, I don't know much about Beta Ray Bill, just that he has the same general powers as Thor and looks like a muscular dog man. Odin forged Beta Ray Bill his own hammer called Stormbreaker, which is also the name of Thor's Groot axe in the MCU. Beta Ray Bill has made an indirect appearance in Thor Ragnarok, where you see a sculpture of him on Sakaar for being one of the Grandmaster's champions. Between Beta Ray Bill's sculpture and the hijacking of his hammer's name for Thor's replacement weapon, I'm tempted to put him on the MCU edition list, though I'll hold out for when he actually appears for real, whenever that will be. I suspect it'll be someday. Probably not soon, but someday for sure. I said Beta Ray Bill's powers are similar to Thor's in the comics, and that's no different here. Beta Ray Bill has the exact same 3 abilities, which is electricity, cracked wall, and flight. I place Beta Ray Bill over the Thors for obvious reason. He's just cooler. Yet another character from the Thunderbolts DLC character pack. We have Mach 5. Now, this one I'm sure is Mach 5 and not Mach V, since Mach is a word to relate the velocity of something to the speed of sound. And Mach 5 is 5 times the speed of sound. And, Mach V would be V times the speed of sound. Doesn't make sense. Mach 5, he periodically upgrades to the next number. Probably because he's either keeps getting faster or he's updating his suit or whatever. Right now, the wiki says Mach 5 is actually Mach 10 now. I'm rambling, but I'm saying this because I called Citizen V and not Citizen 5. Anyway, Mach 5 has 3 abilities on his belt, and the most obvious one is flight, if you couldn't tell from his gargantuan wings. His other 2 abilities are laser and explosive. I find all 3 of these abilities extremely useful, especially since laser and explosive can both be used in combat as well as their specific uses. The existence of Nebula in this game frustrates me. Remember when I complained about a lack of the Guardians of the Galaxy in this game when I talked about Mantis a while back? Well, Nebula was straight up in the 2014 Guardians of the Galaxy movie and was a big part of it. Why does she get a spot and not the other objectively more important Marvel characters? It would be one thing if Nebula was based on the comics version, like Mantis was, but this Nebula looks mighty similar to the Lego version of Nebula from the Guardians of the Galaxy sets. It befuddles me. Why does Nebula get the Lego treatment? Literally all of the Guardians members would make for more interesting characters. Well. Nebula has 4 abilities in this game, and all of them we have seen. The first is regenerative health, which makes sense because she's a cyborg. She has agility because, she's a woman and a cyborg. She can bust open cracked walls because she's a cyborg, and finally, she can deflect lasers because she's a cyborg. Oh, did I forget to mention that Nebula is a cyborg?